In the early days of the PlayStation 2, as gamers were stepping into a bold new era of graphics and gameplay, one survival horror title quietly slipped through the cracks: Extermination. Overshadowed by giants and buried by time, this military meets monster nightmare was packed with eerie atmosphere, intense action, and gameplay ideas that would echo in some of horror's biggest hits years later. It had ambition, it had dread, and it delivered more than anyone gave it credit for. So how did it fall into obscurity, and why should horror fans absolutely dig it up today? Let's dive in. Released in 2001, Extermination came at a time when survival horror was evolving rapidly. The genre was still riding high on the success of Resident Evil and Silent Hill, and expectations were growing fast. Developed by Deep Space, a relatively unknown team including former Ghost in the Shell developers, and published by Sony, Extermination was meant to be an early demonstration of the PS2's power, but instead of flashy visuals or fast-paced action, it gave players something far colder, slower, and more unsettling. A tense, isolated battle for survival in a frozen research facility overrun by a terrifying contagion. You play as Marine Dennis Riley, part of a Special Forces team sent to investigate the mysterious Fort Stewart in Antarctica. What starts as a standard military op quickly turns into a nightmare. The base is abandoned, communications are dead, and something is mutating the facility's staff into horrific, twisted creatures. Worse yet, you are not just fighting monsters. You're also fighting infection. Come into contact with the wrong enemy, and Dennis himself can begin to change, forcing players to manage not just their health and ammo, but the very stability of their body. What makes Extermination stand out isn't just the icy setting or creepy enemy design. It's the way it quietly introduced mechanics that wouldn't become mainstream until years later. Infection-based gameplay, seamless area transitions without load screens, a strong emphasis on environmental storytelling, and a hybrid of action and horror long before it was cool. Despite all this, Extermination was largely ignored by critics and players alike. Some called it clunky, others dismissed it as a generic shooter with a horror coat of paint. But if you look past its rough edges, there's a unique atmospheric experience here that deserves a second chance, especially if you're a fan of classic survival horror with a twist. In this video, we're going to break down Extermination's story, gameplay, mechanics, reception, and most importantly, why it's a game that horror fans should absolutely rediscover. Extermination is, at its core, a survival horror game that constantly reminds players of their vulnerability. Right from the start, the game encourages you to run when you can, because survival isn't just about fighting. It's about conserving resources and avoiding the relentless threats that lurk around every corner. One of the game's most significant elements in crafting this tension is the limited ammunition. In Extermination, you'll quickly realize that ammo is a precious resource. The game only offers a few scattered refills for your weapon, meaning that every shot you take must count. Unlike many action games where ammo can be abundant, here the scarcity forces you to approach combat with caution, and it doesn't stop with the standard weapons. Special weapons like the shotgun, flamethrower, grenade launcher, and rocket launcher come with their own limited supplies of ammunition from the very beginning. No unlimited ammo pickups outside of the assault rifle, and there's few of those. This game takes a much more brutal approach to weapon management, and this scarcity creates an ongoing, palpable sense of tension throughout your journey. However, it's not just about being stingy with ammunition. Extermination also keeps you on edge by making sure that many of the enemies, especially the larger, more grotesque creatures, or those with human-like features, can take a beating before going down. These aren't enemies that will drop after a few well-placed shots. They require consistent, careful damage to defeat, which forces you into a war of attrition every time you encounter one. This doesn't just affect the combat, it directly impacts your decision-making. Do you stand and fight or risk running past the enemies, hoping you have enough resources to outrun them? Adding to the survival horror atmosphere is the game's infection system, which serves as a constant reminder of just how dire the situation is for Dennis. Along with the traditional health bar, there's an additional mechanic to worry about: the infection rate. Every time Dennis is attacked by enemies, his infection rate increases. It doesn't just stop there though. The infection rate works in tandem with your health. While enemies are dealing damage, they're also infecting you, pushing you closer to a state of degeneration. Once the infection rate hits 100%, Dennis becomes fully infected, and his health is reduced to 60% while steadily depleting over time. This isn't just a simple game over mechanic, it shifts the entire pace of the game. Now you're not only managing your health, but also trying to control the infection spread. And what makes it even more insidious is that areas of the environment once considered safe can now harm you. Puddles of infected water that you'd typically walk by become a new hazard. Environmental threats you once ignored are now a source of damage. It's a constant game of risk, and every encounter with an enemy could be the one that pushes you past the point of no return. To combat this, Dennis can use an MTS bed found in various locations around the base. This machine acts as a cure, removing the infection and restoring Dennis's health to full. However, there's a catch. The MTS bed requires a rare item called the MTS vaccine, which is not easily found. The scarcity of these items add another layer of strategic planning. Do you use the vaccine immediately when you're infected, or do you wait for a more dire situation? If Dennis's health reaches 0 while he's infected, the consequences are brutal. He mutates into a monstrous form and dies. There's no second chance. It's an unforgiving system that keeps you on edge, adding to the constant sense of urgency that permeates the game. Now as for combat, Dennis starts with the SPR-4, a highly adaptable assault rifle that's meant to be a versatile tool in a dangerous world. The SPR-4 isn't just your standard firearm. It's designed for customization. Right from the get-go, you can fit the rifle with different attachments, such as a zoom scope, flashlight grip, and radar. These upgrades allow you to tailor your weapon to your playstyle, depending on the threat you face. It's a weapon system that gives you options. Do you want a long-range sniper rifle to pick off enemies from a distance? Or would you prefer a more close-quarters, all-purpose weapon? As you progress through the game, the SPR-4 can also be converted into various special weapons, such as a flamethrower, shotgun, or rocket launcher, each with its own strengths and weaknesses. The shotgun is perfect for taking down close-range enemies, while the rocket launcher is great for large, heavily armored foes. But remember, the ammo for these weapons is limited, and there's no way to replenish it once it's gone. Dennis also carries a combat knife, which may seem like a secondary weapon, but it's invaluable in certain situations. The knife gives you a reliable melee option when ammo runs low, or when you need to conserve resources. It's also useful for quick encounters with smaller enemies, or when you need to save your ammo for something bigger. You can perform a single powerful slash with the knife, or multiple weaker slashes, depending on the situation. It's a simple but effective addition to the combat system, giving you more ways to handle the ever-present threats in the facility. One of the more unique aspects of Extermination's gameplay is the battery pack, which is introduced early on in the game. This rechargeable device powers machinery and facilitates functions common to most video games, such as saving progress. But what makes the battery pack interesting is how it adds an extra layer of strategy to the game. As you explore the facility, you'll need the battery pack to operate various machines and open doors that lead to new areas. It's not a one-and-done item. It requires you to manage and upgrade it as you progress. You can find special cells scattered throughout the facility, which can be used to recharge and upgrade the battery pack. The upgrades allow the pack to hold more power, which becomes essential as you encounter more complex puzzles and barriers in the environment. It's a mechanic that ties into the game's overall theme of limited resources and adds another layer of immersion, forcing you to think about your every move and conserve your energy. Now that we've got a feel for how Extermination plays, its brutal resource management, relentless infection system, and strategic combat, it's time to step deeper into the cold, isolated nightmare that is Fort Stewart. Because beneath the surface of the gameplay lies a story that mixes military intrigue, bio-horror, and personal trauma into a tense and often overlooked narrative. This isn't just a fight for survival. It's a mission laced with guilt, unresolved loss, and something far more terrifying than just mutated creatures. So let's rewind the clock and walk step by step through the events that unfold once Dennis arrives on the frozen, doomed base. Our story begins with a man named Dennis Riley, a soldier, a survivor, and someone carrying a lot more baggage than just military gear. Before we dive into the horrors waiting beneath the ice, let's rewind a bit and understand who Dennis is, and why this mission isn't just another assignment for him. It's personal. Dennis Riley wasn't always a disciplined Marine. He was once a reckless, rebellious teenager, until tragedy forced him to grow up fast. After losing his parents in a terrible accident, Dennis turned his life around and enlisted in the military. Eventually, he found himself in the recon unit of the U.S. Marines, assigned to a team known as Red Light. That's where he met Cindy Chen, another soldier in the unit, and Andrew, a fellow Marine, Dennis's best friend and Cindy's boyfriend. The three of them went through hell together on multiple Special Forces missions. But during an operation in Cambodia, everything went wrong. Andrew was killed in action. Cindy blamed Dennis for what happened, and heartbroken, she distanced herself from everything, transferring to a top-secret research base in Antarctica known as Fort Stewart. A year has passed. Dennis hasn't heard from her since. Then, on Christmas Eve 2005, a distress call cuts through the static. One single desperate message. Immediate airstrike required, but no bombs fall. Instead, a squad of elite U.S. Marines known as Team Red Light is deployed to investigate. Among them is Sergeant Dennis Riley, our protagonist, a hardened Force Recon Marine. Their plane, a massive C-17, malfunctions mid-flight. Chaos erupts. The squad is scattered as the aircraft slams into a frozen tundra, alone and battered. Dennis is ordered to regroup at the designated meeting point, Ground Facility Building B. Dennis links up with his close friend and fellow Marine, Roger Grigman, just outside the fort. With the front gate inaccessible, the two make their way in through a ventilation shaft. What they find inside is a nightmare. The place looks like a war zone. Destruction, blood, silence. Something has gone very, very wrong. To progress deeper into the fort, Dennis lowers a drawbridge. But that's when everything goes sideways. Out of nowhere, grotesque creatures known as hydras, mutated monstrosities, burst out and swarm Roger. Dennis tries to fight them off, but it's too late. The infection spreads through Roger's body like wildfire. Dennis watches in horror as his friend screams and begins to transform. His body twisting, bones cracking, muscles tearing, morphing into something inhuman. Suddenly, a figure in a full hazmat suit appears on a ledge above. Without hesitation, they open fire, cutting Roger down before he can fully mutate. The masked figure tosses Dennis a spare magazine and a strange vial. "Use it if you don't want to end up like your friend," she shouts, before vanishing into the fort and activating lockdown protocols. Dennis gives chase, desperate for answers. Hey, if you're still here and enjoying the video so far, first off, thank you. I put a lot into these deep dives, and it means a lot that you're sticking with it. If you're liking the breakdown, consider hitting that subscribe button. It really helps the channel grow and lets me know this kind of content is something you want more of. And of course, feel free to drop a like, or share your thoughts in the comments. I always enjoy reading through what you think. Dennis eventually catches up with the stranger, and for the first time, sees her unmasked. It's Cindy Chen, a scientist stationed at Fort Stewart, and the former girlfriend of Dennis's fallen comrade, Andrew, who died during a tour in Cambodia. Dennis had been worried about her ever since their deployment, but Cindy is cold and distant. She warns Dennis, "Tell your government their dirty little secret has become a nightmare." On his way to Building B, Dennis is approached by a mysterious journalist named Travis Miller, who's been undercover for 5 years. He hands Dennis his card and slips away into the facility's shadows. While navigating the facility, Dennis finds the water filtration plant, where he meets Carl Morris, one of the project's overseers. Carl tries to explain that something's wrong with the water, deeply wrong, but succumbs to his injuries before he can finish. In Building B, Dennis finally reunites with his commanding officer, Major Mike Madigan, who brings him up to speed. The Pentagon now wants the entire base wiped out. 3 explosive detonators must be manually activated to level the facility. Madigan already sent Marines to do the job, but they didn't make it. Dennis and the remaining squad push forward and are soon confronted by something nightmarish, a mutated human drinking from a water tower. After putting it down, the water inside begins to shift, as if it's alive. Just as it lashes out, it freezes in place, a sign perhaps that cold is its weakness. Dennis continues alone. Along the way, he meets Sonia Leone, who instructs him on how to access the detonators. He also confronts Cindy again, who tells him to stay away, but Dennis can't. He reminds her that on the day Andrew died, he gave his life to save Dennis's, and now Dennis has sworn to protect hers. Following a distress call, Dennis finds another red light Marine, but recovers a metal tag needed to access the level 2 detonator. The power's out, the lights are off, it's pitch black. As Dennis ventures deeper, Travis Miller reappears one last time, saying he has everything he needs. After that, he's never seen again. Dennis meets a wounded Marine who gives him another tag before dying. Reflecting on the earlier battle, Dennis begins to connect the dots. The water, whatever this contagion is, reacts to the cold. Cindy confirms it. The infection is caused by a bacterium called HO213, which thrives in water and grows rapidly. The only way to stop it, destroy the master strain, called Origin, and everything else dies with it. Meanwhile, Major Madigan's team had to sabotage the coolant reactor, hoping to buy time by freezing the bacteria. Dennis rushes to catch up, but finds another Marine, Khalil, wounded by gunfire. Before dying, Khalil reveals a shocking truth. Madigan shot him. Dennis climbs a frozen cliff and meets up with Madigan, who gives him one last mission: retrieve an explosive device from the downed C-17 wreckage. As Dennis secures the bomb, a chilling scream echoes through comms. Returning via elevator, Dennis finds his old friend Roger, now completely mutated, a hulking killing machine. What follows is a brutal, desperate battle. Dennis barely survives. Madigan, gravely injured, reveals the truth. The US government wanted to destroy the bacteria, but the CIA had other plans. Khalil was their agent, sent to preserve it. The Marines, just pawns in the experiment. Madigan, with his final breath, entrusts Dennis with leadership of Team Redlight and volunteers for a suicide mission to deliver the explosive to the coolant core. Back in Building B, Gary tells Cindy how Dennis never recovered Andrew's body during the war. Cindy admits she resented Dennis for it, but never had the strength to say it. Now everything rests on Dennis. He returns and hands Cindy a disc from Madigan. On it, full confirmation that Project Extermination was never about research. It was a live field test. Everyone there, even the Marines, were guinea pigs. Dennis heads to the final detonator, only to be stopped by Dr. Jan Falcon, the deranged scientist behind it all. Falcon, obsessed with HO213, refers to the bacteria as his son. Before he can interfere, the building quakes, debris collapses, killing Falcon on the spot. Dennis triggers the last detonator. As the facility explodes, Dennis, Cindy, and Gary escape aboard a massive LCAC hovercraft. But it's not over yet. From the depths of the ocean, the master strain, Origin, emerges. Now a monstrous aquatic beast, Dennis mans the guns and opens fire. Just when it seems defeated, it transforms again, towering, grotesque, and relentless. A final battle erupts on the LCAC deck. Origin, in its last desperate act, creates a doppelganger of Dennis himself. But Dennis refuses to lose. He fights. He survives. Origin is destroyed. With the nightmare over, Cindy finally apologizes for her coldness. Dennis reassures her, "I hated myself too," he says. "But if you ever need anything, I'll be there. This time, I promise." Extermination doesn't just wear its inspirations on its sleeve. It bleeds them into every corridor, every freezing gust of Antarctic wind, and every twitch of infected flesh. This game isn't just about shooting monsters, it's about survival, paranoia, and the slow psychological unraveling that happens when you're trapped in an isolated hell, surrounded by people who might not be people for long. From the moment Dennis Riley crash lands in the tundra, Extermination sets a grim tone. The Antarctic setting plays a critical role in shaping the game's overall atmosphere. It's not just a backdrop, but an active participant in the horror. With temperatures so cold that can preserve the very bacteria threatening humanity, and whiteout conditions that swallow both sight and sound, the game evokes the same claustrophobic dread as The Thing, a clear influence acknowledged by fans and critics alike. You're not just alone in a hostile environment. You're in a place designed to kill you slowly, even without monsters. At the core of Extermination lies a powerful theme of infection. HO213 isn't just a sci-fi bug, it's a metaphor for corruption, both physical and moral. The bacteria doesn't just destroy the body, it warps and twists into something unrecognizable, reflecting the hidden agendas and ethical decay behind Fort Stewart's operations. Soldiers mutate into grotesque abominations, friends turn into threats, and betrayal hides behind every sealed door. The game constantly reinforces the idea that a real enemy may not be the monsters, but the people pulling the strings behind the scenes. Government agencies, scientists, and military brass who treat human lives as expendable. The game's infection system ties directly into this theme. As Dennis is exposed to the contagion, the player must constantly monitor his health, administer vaccines, and tread carefully through infested zones. This mechanic isn't just about survival. It creates a creeping tension, a ticking time bomb that turns every enemy encounter into a gamble. It makes you feel the stakes in a visceral way. You're not just surviving monsters, you're fighting to maintain your own humanity. Visually, the game reinforces this dread with cold, sterile environments bathed in artificial light and industrial grime. You're walking through the remains of a scientific utopia gone horribly wrong. Labs filled with broken equipment, medical bays smeared with blood, and sealed quarantine zones echoing with inhuman screams. It's a place frozen in time, where hope died long before you got there. And then there's the silence. Extermination is eerily quiet at times, letting the sound of Dennis's footsteps or the distant rumble of machinery do all the talking. When music does creep in, it's subtle and unsettling, often signaling that something horrible is just around the corner. Another recurring theme is sacrifice. Characters like Madigan and Roger represent two sides of the same coin. One consumed by his mission to destroy the bacteria, the other tragically lost to it. Through these interactions, the game explores what people are willing to give up for the greater good, and what happens when that sacrifice is twisted by secrecy, lies, and ambition. Even Cindy's cold demeanor masks a deep emotional scar tied to loss and guilt, humanizing her in a way that makes the player feel the weight of the situation. Then there's the government conspiracy element, which adds another layer of existential horror. The idea that everything happening at Fort Stewart was part of a test, a way to monitor the bacteria's effect on civilians and soldiers alike, turns Extermination into more than just a monster game. It becomes a bleak commentary on how easily institutions sacrifice people in the name of progress and control. You're not just fighting to stay alive, you're uncovering a truth that was never meant to get out. Ultimately, Extermination's themes of isolation, infection, sacrifice, and corruption all serve one purpose: to make you question who the real monsters are. Is it the twisted creatures clawing through the walls, or the people who let it happen? Extermination crafts a visual experience that pulls players into its haunting world. While it's released on PlayStation 2, the game may not boast the high-definition clarity of modern titles, but its atmospheric design and attention to detail create an immersive environment that resonates with fans of survival horror. From the moment you step into Fort Stewart, the game's setting envelops you. The research facility, once a hub of scientific endeavor, now stands as a decaying monument to catastrophe. The interior is a labyrinth of dimly lit corridors, flickering lights, and rooms overrun with grotesque aftermath of the H213 contagion. The design choices emphasize isolation and decay, with walls adorned in peeling paint, rusted metal, and the ever-present threat of infestation. Outdoor sequences break the monotony of indoor exploration, introducing players to the harsh Antarctic wilderness. Blizzard effects are particularly noteworthy. The swirling snow and limited visibility not only challenge navigation, but also heighten the sense of vulnerability. These environmental cues are not just aesthetic choices, they're integral to the game's atmosphere, making every step feel perilous. The infected inhabitants of Fort Stewart are a testament to the game's commitment to horror. Early encounters with mutated creatures, such as the Hydras, referred to as bugs in the North American release, showcase the game's dedication to unsettling design. These creatures are not mere obstacles, they're manifestations of the contagions' horrors, each more grotesque than the last. As players progress, the mutations become more elaborate and disturbing. The attention to detail in their design, be it the pulsating masses of flesh or the eerie glow of weak spots, add layers to the horror. The animations, while occasionally stiff, convey the unnatural movements of these entities, enhancing the sense of unease. The human characters, though limited by the hardware's capabilities, are designed with attention to detail. Dennis Riley, the protagonist, is equipped with a variety of gear that reflects his military background. His movements, while not as fluid as modern standards, are functional and purposeful, aligning with the game's emphasis on realism. However, it's the environmental storytelling that truly shines. Abandoned laboratories, makeshift barricades, and scattered personal belongings paint a vivid picture of the chaos that ensued. These elements invite players to piece together the narrative, adding depth to the experience. Lighting plays a crucial role in establishing the game's mood. Shadows loom in every corner, and the interplay of light and dark keeps players on edge. The use of lighting extends to the creatures themselves. Some are only visible when illuminated, adding an element of surprise and tension. Visual effects, though limited by the PS2's hardware, are employed effectively. Explosions, fires, and other dynamic elements are designed to be impactful without overwhelming the system's capabilities. These effects, combined with the game's sound design, create moments of high tension and release. While Extermination may not have the graphical prowess of some contemporaries, its visual design is a testament to the power of atmosphere and detail. The game's environments, creature designs, and use of lighting work in harmony to create a world that feels both alien and terrifyingly familiar. For fans of survival horror, the visual experience is both a journey and a destination, drawing players into a narrative where every corner hides a new horror. In the desolate, snow-blasted corridors of Fort Stewart, every creak of metal and distant growl sends a chill down your spine. Extermination may not boast the polished audio fidelity of modern titles, but its sound design and music work tirelessly to immerse players in its grim narrative. From the moment you step into the game's icy world, the soundscape envelops you. The subtle hum of malfunctioning machinery, the distant echoes of unseen creatures, and the eerie silence between encounters all contribute to the palpable sense of dread. These ambient sounds are masterfully crafted to keep players on edge, ensuring that every corner turned feels like a step into the unknown. The game's monstrous inhabitants are brought to life through unsettling audio cues. The skittering of the Hydras, the guttural roars of the mutated foes, and the sickening squelch of their movements are all designed to evoke disgust and fear. These sounds are not just for shock value. They serve as auditory signals, warning players of impending threats and enhancing the game's survival horror elements. The music in Extermination is a study in contrast. While some tracks attempt to build tension with gothic undertones, others veer into upbeat tempos that feel out of place in the game's bleak setting. This inconsistency has led to mixed reviews, with some players finding the music jarring and detracing from the atmosphere. However, in moments where the score aligns with the game's tone, it effectively amplifies the sense of urgency and horror. Voice acting in Extermination has been a point of contention among players. Critics have noted that the performances lack emotional depth, with characters delivering lines in a flat or overreacted manner. This disconnect can break immersion, especially during pivotal narrative moments. Additionally, issues with lip syncing further detract from the believability of characters' interactions. Despite its shortcomings, the audio design in Extermination plays a crucial role in shaping the player's experience. The combination of atmospheric sounds, creature audio, and music works to create a tense and immersive environment. While the voice acting may falter, the overall sound design succeeds in keeping players engaged and on edge throughout their journey in the frozen wasteland. When Extermination hit the shelves in 2001, it quickly found itself under the scrutiny of both critics and players. The survival horror genre was at a crucial crossroads, with iconic titles like Resident Evil and Silent Hill dominating the market. Extermination aimed to carve its own identity, blending atmospheric tension with action-driven gameplay. As a result, the reception was mixed, with some aspects praised and others criticized. One of the standout features highlighted by critics was Extermination's relentless atmosphere, which effectively captured the essence of isolation and dread. Game critics described the game's environments as eerily detailed, with tension building slowly as players explored the eerie research facility. It was the kind of tension that Resident Evil fans could appreciate, but with a more immersive, almost claustrophobic quality. Critics also noted that Extermination offered a unique spin on the genre, adding a strong emphasis on resource management and a more dynamic combat system that made each encounter feel significant. Additionally, Extermination's emphasis on exploration was frequently praised. The game's environments felt expansive for a PS2 title, allowing players to discover hidden secrets and delve deeper into the story. TotalGames.net lauded the game for its immersive setting, detailing how the well-crafted world contributed to the overall enjoyment of the game. The journal-like entries, environmental storytelling, and the slow-building tension all worked to keep the players on edge, making each room feel like a new mystery waiting to be uncovered. These design choices were seen as a refreshing departure from the more linear survival horror games that were popular at the time. However, not everyone was enamored with Extermination. While the gameplay and atmosphere were praised, the game faced criticism for its reliance on formulaic survival horror tropes. Some players found the combat, while functional, to be somewhat generic and not as engaging as it could have been. A few reviewers on GameFAQs pointed out that despite the game's interesting premise, it lacked the depth and polish that could have elevated it to a truly great game. Additionally, some gamers felt the game's pacing was inconsistent. While there were moments of intense action, there were also long stretches where the game dragged, which made it harder to maintain engagement throughout. Another point of contention was the game's length. Many players found that Extermination was on the shorter side, especially for a game that promised a full survival horror experience. At the time of its release, games like Resident Evil and Silent Hill 2 offered more expansive narratives and environments, and Extermination was seen as somewhat lacking in comparison. The short playtime left some gamers feeling unsatisfied, especially when considering the game's potential to expand on its intriguing concept. Despite its shortcomings, Extermination had managed to build a cult following over the years. Fans of the game often pointed to its atmosphere, creature design, and unique setting as an aspect that continued to stand out. The eerie isolation of the Antarctic research facility, combined with unnerving presence of the mutant creatures, created a backdrop that many survival horror enthusiasts still appreciate today. It's often remembered fondly by players who first experienced it during the early days of the PlayStation 2 era, and it remains a nostalgic gem for many. In fact, as the years have gone by, Extermination's reputation has only grown among retro gaming enthusiasts. The game is frequently mentioned in discussions about underrated or forgotten PS2 titles on Reddit. Several threads have popped up where players express their fondness for the game, some even hoping for a remake or remaster to bring the concept back to life with modern technology. These conversations highlight the potential that many players feel Extermination had, suggesting that with a few tweaks, it could thrive in today's gaming landscape. The game's mix of survival horror and action elements, along with its memorable story and dark atmosphere, make it ripe for rediscovery. Ultimately, Extermination is a game that's caught in the middle. Not quite a classic, but not a failure either. While its lack of polish and shorter length might prevent it from standing alongside the titans of survival horror, its unique setting, tension-filled atmosphere, and interesting premise have ensured its place in the hearts of a dedicated fanbase. As with many cult classics, Extermination serves as a reminder of what could have been, and for those who played it, it remains a hidden gem. A game that stood apart from the crowd in an era where survival horror was beginning to evolve into something more cinematic and dramatic. Extermination introduced several gameplay mechanics that were ahead of their time. Notably, it featured a modular weapon system, allowing players to customize their assault rifle with various attachments to suit different combat scenarios. This level of weapon customization was relatively novel in survival horror games at the time. The game also implemented a dual health system, where players had to manage both physical health and infection levels. As infection increased, it adversely affected the protagonist's abilities, adding a layer of strategic resource management that heightened the tension and urgency inherent in survival horror experiences. While Extermination may not have garnered widespread acclaim upon release, its contributions to the genre's evolution are noteworthy. The game's emphasis on action-oriented combat and player mobility foreshadowed a a shift in survival horror towards more dynamic gameplay. This transition became more pronounced with the release of Resident Evil 4 in 2005, which adopted an over-the-shoulder perspective and more fluid combat mechanics. By integrating these elements early on, Extermination served as a precursor to the action survival horror hybrid, influencing subsequent titles that sought to balance horror with more engaging combat systems. Over time, Extermination has achieved cult status among survival horror enthusiasts. Its unique setting, a remote Antarctic research facility, and its atmospheric design have been praised for creating a sense of isolation and dread, reminiscent of John Carpenter's The Thing. Although it didn't spawn a franchise, the game's innovative features and distinctive approach to survival horror have kept it in discussions about underrated gems for the PS2 era. Its willingness to experiment with genre conventions has inspired developers to explore more directions with survival horror, contributing to the genre's ongoing evolution. Extermination may not be the most famous survival horror game out there, but it's one that left a lasting impression on those who gave it a chance. From its chilling Antarctic setting and tense gameplay, to its heavy atmosphere and deeper than expected plot, it captured that classic early 2000s era of experimentation in gaming. It stood as a bold early entry into the PlayStation 2 survival horror library, and quietly pushed boundaries, even if many overlooked it at the time. Revisiting it today not only feels nostalgic, it's a reminder of how far the genre has come and how creative developers were even back then. There's something special about these one-off horror games from that generation, the ones that dared to try something new without the pressure of spawning a franchise. Extermination is one of those hidden gems that deserve to be remembered. Thank you so much for watching and spending your time with me as we took this deep dive into the icy, infected corridors of Extermination. I genuinely appreciate every viewer who takes the time to watch these. I make them because I love exploring forgotten and underrated pieces of gaming history, and I hope you enjoy experiencing them all over again with me. Lately, I've been thinking about launching a second channel focused on storytelling, where I retell these game stories in a more cinematic, shot-for-shot format. The idea would be to put you directly in the protagonist's shoes, almost like watching a gritty movie adaptation unfold in real time. If that's something you think you'd be interested in, I'd love to hear your thoughts. It's something I've been really passionate about doing, and your feedback would mean a lot. Again, thank you for hanging out and going through this wild frozen ride with me. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and keep exploring those hidden corridors of gaming history.